Hi, everybody. We're on to page 3 for The Great Divorce. If you haven't already started to do this, I would highly recommend that as we move through the characters that are actually given formal names that are usually put in bold or all caps, I'd highly recommend that you start kind of a series of notes about that person's characteristic. Just because those people aren't oftentimes given names, they're oftentimes just given these little allusions or these sort of formal titles, just so that way as we progress and get more characters in the story, you can be aware of who it is that we're talking about at this time. We've already encountered the big man several times, and even though I haven't talked about him in the videos, hopefully you're reading along and have been able to notice that the big man is just normally a person that's characterized by violent acts that are usually brutish and unnecessary. Today we're going to continue along and talk about the tousle-haired poet who we met on the last page, but we've actually been given a formal title on this page. He's really characterized by this mindset that life isn't fair, and he talks about how he's gone through and he hates capitalism and he hates the current education system, and he wasn't at one point in line with Russia, but then Russia started going along with the capitalists and he didn't like it, so he traveled to America. He didn't like it there, and then he traveled and went to Sweden. He talks about how there was never enough money to go around and how all of the women in his life have just constantly spurned him. But if we look at what Lewis is actually doing with these words, we can find out what's actually going on in the story of this tousle-haired poet. He's always been given everything that he's ever asked for, and he thinks that everybody around him is out to get him, whenever in fact he's just not working hard at anything that he's doing. We also know that he comes from a very wealthy family. We know this from the middle of the first paragraph when he says that his father is giving him a ludicrously inadequate allowance. What does that mean? Well, an allowance isn't just like what you might think of an allowance being in your current household if you get one, right? It's not just a sum of like maybe $10. It's a sum of maybe, I don't know, $10,000 a month, right? Allowances were at this time things that you received from a very wealthy family, from a very wealthy inheritance that was sort of paid out to you over time. If anybody's ever read one of the great Jane Eyre novels, you'd know that Mr. Darcy received an allowance. I think it was around the sum of like $10,000 a year or £10,000 a year. And that's a really incredible sum at the time. And now we're fast forwarding to where this person is complaining about their allowance. Again, not $10 a month, but probably more along the lines of $10,000 a month. And again, they're not having to work for it, right? It's just what's coming into the bank from their family having so much money. Um, he talks about this girl who's treating him poorly. Well, why is she treating him poorly? Well, we know that it's because she unexpectedly revealed that she had a massive bourgeois prejudices, like the man should have to go to work, and monogamic instincts, which is she doesn't want to have sex until marriage, and she only wants to have sex with him if they ever get married. So he was upset because she was being hard to get. And then finally, she even had shown herself to be mean about money. What is that to say? Well, it's not like she was rude about how to use money, but mean means frugal, means careful about how to spend it. And so he's this lavish spender who loves to travel, who loves to go and buy really ridiculous things so that way he can be seen as this important person, when at the end of the day, right, even the person that he's closest to in life doesn't want that lifestyle. And again, we realize in the next paragraph that all he ever really wants is he wants to go into this new place and find there recognition and admiration. He wants other people to think that he's important. In the next paragraph, in the third to last paragraph on the page, you'll see that this conversation is interrupted because there's this quarrel that breaks out on the bus, this fight that breaks out. And all of a sudden, the main character finds himself in a new spot. That's because he had been shot, right? So he disappears from one place on the bus and then ends up in another place because he's shot, but he can't die because he's already dead. So he just moves to a different place. And obviously, going back really quick to the poet, he committed suicide. That's what it means to jump under a train, in case you didn't catch that. And then finally, in the last two paragraphs, we notice quite the size of this town. Was it a large town? Well, yes and no. It had a lot of people in it, but the size of the town had just continued to expand because everybody was moving away from it. All right, and we'll visit this more as we talk about it in the next lecture.